The story that inspired the novel is the story of the day the army came to my grandmother's house. And it was 1971, it was during the Bangladesh War of Independence, and throughout the war, my grandmother had been harboring freedom fighters in her home. Her house was known as one of the safe havens for the freedom fighters to come before and after they were fighting the Pakistan army. And so in August 1971, towards the end of the war, the army came to my grandmother's house, and the night before, her eldest son had just been involved in blowing up a power plant in the city. So the army came to her house to interrogate her and to convince her to tell them where her son was hiding. He wasn't obviously hiding in her house. But her two younger children were also in the house. So they threatened her. They threatened to take her two younger children away, one of which was my mother, if she didn't tell them where her son was. One of the interesting episodes of that day is that there was a giant hole in the garden where the freedom fighters had buried all their ammunition. And they had, even though they had taken away the ammunition, the hole was still there. So what the army officer who came to interrogate my grandmother did was he separated her from her children, and they asked her, why is there a hole in the garden? And she said, we're trying to dig a tube well because there's no water. So we're trying to dig a well. And then they asked her children, why is there a hole in the garden? And they said, we're trying to dig a well. And it's sort of one of those sort of magical moments, because they hadn't really, they hadn't really prepared to tell this lie, but they all happened to tell the same lie. So that was one of the things I think that convinced the army that maybe, she was telling the truth. But at the end of this very long day, something passed between my grandmother and this army officer, because he was about to take her children away. And somehow she convinced him to let them go. And nobody really knows what she said to him or what really happened. But it was one of those, I suppose it was one of those things that happened between two humans, and maybe he just took pity on her, or she became real to him. She wasn't just the enemy. And, he left, and he didn't take her children. And she saved them somehow. Nobody knows how. I don't know. But that's a story that's really inspired me for many years, and that inspired, some of the events in the book.